Against all protocols and Commander Chen's explicit orders, Mara found herself descending through a newly bored shaft that extended far deeper into Europa's ice than the original excavation. Dr. Kim and Dr. Harrison accompanied her, along with a full security team led by Sergeant First Class Maria Santos, a veteran of the Coalition's elite Xenoarchaeological Protection Corps. The journey down took nearly 2 hours, with stops every few hundred meters to recalibrate their instruments and ensure the structural integrity of the ice around them. The alien intelligence had provided detailed specifications for the excavation, transmitted through the increasingly sophisticated translation protocols that Kim had developed. The electromagnetic readings are off the charts, Dr. Harrison reported as they descended past the 4-kilometer mark. Whatever's down here, it's been drawing power for millennia. The energy signatures suggest technology that operates on principles we don't even understand. The walls of the shaft began to change as they went deeper. What had started as natural ice formations gradually gave way to smooth, artificial surfaces that seemed to be carved from the ice itself. Geometric patterns flowed across the walls, the same mathematical motifs they had seen on the artifact above, but more complex and detailed. "Look at this," Kim called out, training her lights on a section of wall where symbols seemed to move and shift as they watched. The writing is actually changing in real time. It's like the walls themselves are alive. Sergeant Santos kept her weapon ready, though she admitted privately that she had no idea what they might encounter that conventional military training could prepare them for. Her team had faced hostile alien technology before, but never anything that demonstrated the level of sophistication they were seeing here. At the 6-kilometer mark, the shaft opened into a vast chamber that defied comprehension. Their lights, designed to illuminate large archaeological sites, barely reached the far walls. The space was filled with structures that seemed to blend organic and technological elements, crystalline formations that pulsed with inner light, flowing metallic surfaces that responded to their presence, and overhead, a ceiling that disappeared into star-filled darkness. "My God," Dr. Harrison whispered, "this isn't just a facility. It's an entire city." The alien intelligence had been waiting for them. As they entered the chamber, holographic displays activated throughout the space, filling the air with images and symbols that provided a comprehensive overview of galactic history. But this wasn't the simplified presentation they had seen earlier. This was a full record, complete with details that painted a terrifying picture of the universe beyond Earth. "The Devourers," Kim said, translating the flowing symbols as quickly as she could process them. "This is their complete history. They're not just predators. There's something much worse." The holographic displays showed the true nature of the entities approaching human space. They were not biological organisms or technological constructs, but something that existed in the quantum foam underlying reality itself. They fed on information, not just data, but the fundamental patterns that gave structure to matter and energy. They consumed the quantum information that defines reality. Dr. Harrison read from his instruments, which were somehow interfacing directly with the alien displays. When they encounter a technological civilization, they don't just destroy it, they unwrite it from existence. Every person, every achievement, every trace of that civilization's existence is erased from the universe. The implications were beyond horrifying. Death was one thing, but complete erasure from reality was something else entirely. The Devourers didn't just kill civilizations. They made it as if those civilizations had never existed at all. "How many?" Mara asked, dreading the answer. The display showed a galactic map spanning millions of years. Thousands of star systems were marked with the same symbol. Civilizations that had achieved interstellar communication and then simply vanished, erased from reality so completely that only the hidden observers like the artifact's builders even remembered they had existed. The builders of this place called themselves the Architects, Kim translated. They were one of the oldest technological civilizations in the galaxy. When they first detected the Devourers, they tried to fight them using conventional weapons. It was useless. You can't destroy something that exists outside normal space-time. So they hid, Dr. Harrison realized. They built facilities like this one and went into hibernation, hoping to survive until the Devourers moved on to other regions of the galaxy. But it didn't work, Mara said, studying the historical records that flowed past them. The Devourers found them anyway. The displays showed the final battles between the architects and the entities that consumed reality itself. Entire star systems were used as weapons, matter and energy converted into quantum structures designed to disrupt the Devourer's existence. For a brief time, it seemed the architects might succeed. Then the displays went dark. The Devourers had adapted, evolved, learned to feed on the very weapons used against them. The architects' final desperate strategy had only made their enemies stronger. "This is their last message," Kim said, tears streaming down her face as she translated the final records. "They're telling us that conventional resistance is futile. The only way to survive is to evolve beyond the Devourer's ability to perceive us." "Evolve how?" Sergeant Santos asked, though her tactical training told her she wouldn't like the answer. The alien displays began showing complex technological specifications, blueprints of devices that could manipulate quantum reality itself. The modifications to humanity's satellite network were just the beginning. To survive the Devourers, humans would need to transform themselves and their entire civilization into something that existed partially outside normal space-time. "They want to turn us into something like them," Dr. Harrison said, studying the technical specifications. "Beings that exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. It's the only way to hide from entities that feed on quantum information." Mara felt the weight of the decision bearing down on her. The architects were offering humanity a path to survival, but at the cost of everything that made them human. They would survive, but as transformed beings that might be unrecognizable to their current selves. "There's something else," Kim said, pointing to additional displays that had activated. "They're showing us the location of other repositories like this one. Hidden facilities throughout the galaxy where other civilizations might have survived the Devourer's passage." The map that appeared showed dozens of star systems, each marked with the same symbol that identified the architect's hidden installations. If the alien intelligence was correct, humanity might not be alone in the universe after all. There could be other survivors, other civilizations that had managed to hide from the cosmic predators. "We could build an alliance," Mara realized. "Combine the knowledge and resources of multiple civilizations. Together, we might be able to find a way to stop the Devourers permanently." But even as she spoke, new displays activated showing the most terrifying revelation yet. The Devourers were not a natural phenomenon. They were created weapons, designed by some unknown civilization to eliminate potential rivals. And their creators were still out there, somewhere in the cosmic darkness, continuing to manufacture new Devourers to send against any civilization that achieved interstellar technology. "We're not just fighting for our survival," Dr. Harrison said grimly. "We're fighting a war that's been going on for millions of years against an enemy that treats the destruction of entire civilizations as standard policy." Sergeant Santos checked her communication equipment. "I'm getting a priority signal from the surface. Admiral Torres is demanding an immediate status report." Mara looked around the vast alien repository, filled with the accumulated knowledge of a civilization that has struggled against cosmic horror for eons before finally succumbing. Somewhere above them, Admiral Torres was preparing to destroy humanity's only chance of accessing this knowledge. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, entities that could erase entire civilizations from existence were drawing closer to Earth. "Tell Admiral Torres that we found proof," Mara said. "The Devourers are real, they're coming, and the alien intelligence is our only hope of survival. But also tell her that survival will require choices that will change what it means to be human." The message was transmitted through the quantum communication array, but Mara knew that words alone might not be enough to convince the Admiral. They needed to bring back proof, physical evidence that could be verified by human scientists. "Can we download any of this data?" she asked him. "The intelligence is already preparing data packages for us," Kim replied. "Complete technical specifications, historical records, star charts showing the Devourer's approach vector. Everything we need to convince Admiral Torres and begin preparing Earth's defenses." As they prepared to leave the repository, Mara took one last look around the vast chamber. The accumulated knowledge of a dead civilization surrounded them, a testament to both the heights that intelligence could achieve and the depths of the threat they faced. The journey back to the surface would take hours, but their real journey was just beginning. Humanity was about to discover that the universe was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined, and their survival would depend on choices that would test the very essence of what it meant to be human. The war for the future of human consciousness was about to begin. The data package that Mara's team brought back from the alien repository contained enough information to keep the Coalition's best scientists busy for decades. Quantum encryption algorithms that could hide entire planets from detection, matter transmutation technologies that could convert asteroids into construction materials, and most importantly, detailed specifications for the dimensional displacement devices that could allow humans to exist partially outside normal space-time. Admiral Torres studied the technical readouts with a mixture of awe and horror. The conference room aboard her flagship was filled with the Coalition's top military and scientific advisors, all struggling to comprehend the scope of the threat they faced and the radical nature of the solution being offered. According to these projections, Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the Coalition's chief technology officer, said while gesturing at a holographic display, the Devourers will reach the outer boundaries of human space in approximately 5 months and 3 weeks. Their approach vector puts Earth directly in their path. And you're certain these readings are accurate? Torres asked Dr. Harrison, who had spent the past 18 hours verifying the alien data against human astronomical observations. The electromagnetic signatures match perfectly with anomalous readings our deep space monitoring stations have been detecting for the past 2 years, Harrison confirmed. We dismissed them as background radiation from distant supernovas, but now we know what we were really seeing, the quantum wake left by entities that consume information itself. Admiral Torres turned to the military advisors. Assessment of our current offensive capabilities? General Patricia Hayes, the Coalition's chief military strategist, delivered the grim evaluation. Based on what we've learned about the Devourer's capabilities, our entire military arsenal would be useless against them. Nuclear weapons, antimatter warheads, even theoretical relativistic kill vehicles. None of them can affect entities that exist outside normal space-time. What about the modifications to our satellite network? Torres asked. The alien intelligence claims they're part of a defensive system. Dr. Warren pulled up the latest analysis of the satellite modifications. The upgrades are incredibly sophisticated. They've converted our communications satellites into components of a massive quantum field generator. If the alien specifications are correct, activating the full network would create a dimensional displacement field around Earth that could make us invisible to the Devourers. At what cost? Torres demanded. That's the problem, Warren admitted. The displacement field would require every human being on Earth to undergo quantum transformation. Our consciousness would be shifted into a multidimensional state that allows existence in both normal space-time and the quantum foam underlying reality. Dr. Kim, who had been quietly studying the alien cultural records, looked up from her tablet. The architects went through the same transformation when they first detected the Devourers. According to their records, the process is irreversible. Once a consciousness has been shifted into multidimensional existence, it can never return to purely physical form. The implications hung in the air like a death sentence. Humanity could survive the Devourers, but only by permanently transforming into something that might no longer be recognizably human. What would we become? Admiral Torres asked a question that everyone was thinking. Mara consulted the translation of the architect's final records. Beings capable of existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. We would retain our memories, our personalities, our essential selves, but our physical forms would become quantum constructs that could phase in and out of normal reality. Essentially, we become living ghosts, Dr. Harrison added, capable of interaction with normal matter when necessary, but existing primarily in the quantum dimensions where the Devourers can't detect us. General Hayes frowned. And there's no alternative? No way to fight these things using conventional means. The architects tried for thousands of years, Kim replied. Every weapon they developed only made the Devourers stronger. The entities literally feed on organized information, including the quantum patterns that define matter and energy. Attacking them with conventional weapons is like trying to put out a fire by feeding it fuel. Admiral Torres stood and walked to the viewing port. Looking out at the stars that humanity had thought they were destined to explore and colonize. Instead, they had discovered that the universe was dominated by entities that treated the extermination of technological civilizations as routine pest control. How long do we have to make this decision? She asked. Dr. Warren consulted the alien specifications. The quantum transformation process would take approximately 6 weeks to complete for Earth's entire population. If we're going to do this, we need to begin within the next 2 weeks to ensure everyone is protected before the Devourers arrive. And if we refuse? Mara looked at the star charts showing the paths of previous Devourer incursions. Based on the Architect's records, we have perhaps a few hours between detection and complete erasure. Not enough time to evacuate even a single city, much less preserve human civilization. The weight of the decision was crushing. Torres was being asked to authorize the transformation of every human being in the solar system into something that had never existed before. The survival of the species hung in the balance, but so did the question of whether the beings that survived would still be human in any meaningful sense. I need to speak with the alien intelligence directly, Torres decided. If we're going to trust our entire civilization to these entities, I want to understand their motivations and capabilities. 2 hours later, Admiral Torres found herself in the communication chamber that had been established in direct quantum link with the artifact on Europa. The alien intelligence had grown significantly more sophisticated in its communication abilities, now capable of near real-time dialogue through the translation protocols. I am Admiral Rachel Torres, commanding officer of the Coalition Defense Forces. She announced to the swirling patterns of light that represented the alien consciousness. I need to understand why you're willing to help us. What do you gain from our survival? The response came in the form of complex symbol patterns that the translation system converted into surprisingly emotional language. We are the last echoes of the architects. For 50,000 years, we have waited in solitude, carrying the memory of our civilization and the knowledge of how to resist the Devourers. Your species represents hope, the possibility that intelligence can survive and perhaps one day find a way to end the cosmic war. You're using us as weapons against the entities that destroyed your people, Torres realized. We are offering you the chance to become something greater than either of our species alone, the intelligence replied. The transformation we propose would not diminish your humanity. It would expand it beyond the limitations of purely physical existence. Dr. Mara Elson, who had been monitoring the exchange, leaned forward. What about the other survivors you showed us? The other civilizations that might have escaped the Devourers? New displays activated, showing star charts with dozens of marked systems. Many chose transformation. Others chose different paths. Some retreated into pocket dimensions. Some uploaded their consciousness into quantum computers. Some scattered across the galaxy as energy beings. All survive, but in forms their original selves might not recognize. And together, these survivors are fighting back against the Devourers? Torres asked. We are learning. Each encounter teaches us more about the entities and their creators. One day, we may accumulate enough knowledge to find their source and end the threat permanently. But that day is still millennia in the future. Admiral Torres felt the weight of cosmic history pressing down on her. Humanity was being offered a chance to join an ancient alliance of transformed civilizations, united in their struggle against entities that treated the destruction of entire species as routine policy. The price was everything they thought they knew about what it meant to be human. If we agree to the transformation, Torres said, what guarantees do we have that the process will work as advertised? How do we know you're not simply using us for your own purposes? The alien intelligence's response was immediate and unexpected. It began projecting detailed recordings of the architect's transformation process, showing how their civilization had adapted to multidimensional existence. The beings that emerged were clearly recognizable as descendants of their original selves, but with capabilities that transcended anything purely physical entities could achieve. You would retain your essential nature, the intelligence explained. Your creativity, your emotions, your capacity for growth and change. But you would also gain abilities that would allow you to explore regions of reality that physical beings cannot access. Dr. Kim looked up from her analysis of the transformation records. Admiral, there's something else. The quantum transformation appears to enhance rather than diminish cognitive capabilities. The architect became more intelligent, more creative, more capable of complex thought after the process. Because consciousness itself is a quantum phenomenon, Dr. Harrison added. By expanding human existence into multiple dimensions, we might be unlocking potential that purely physical brains can't access. Admiral Torres made the most difficult decision in human history. Dr. Elson, transmit the transformation specifications to all Coalition worlds immediately. Begin preparations for Species Y quantum evolution, and pray that we're making the right choice. As the orders went out across human space, Mara couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing a threshold from which there could be no return. Humanity was about to discover what lay beyond the boundaries of physical existence, but whether what they found would still be recognizably human remained to be seen. The transformation of human civilization was about to begin. The transformation began on Mars, where the lower population density and advanced terraforming infrastructure made it easier to establish the quantum field generators required for the process. Dr. Mara Elson stood in the observation deck of the primary research facility, watching as the first volunteers underwent humanity's greatest evolutionary leap. The volunteers were connected to devices that looked like crystalline trees, their branches extending into dimensions that human eyes couldn't perceive. The alien intelligence had provided detailed specifications for the transformation equipment, and human engineers had worked around the clock to construct the first prototypes. Neural pathway integration at 73%, reported Dr. Sarah Kim, who was monitoring the process from a heavily shielded control room. Quantum consciousness transfer proceeding within normal parameters. Define normal, muttered Commander Chun, who had been assigned to oversee the security aspects of the transformation program. We're literally turning people into beings that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. There's nothing normal about any of this. The first volunteer was Dr. Michael Torres, a neuroscientist who had volunteered to test the process despite being Admiral Torres's younger brother. He had been in the quantum field for 3 hours, and the changes were already visible. His physical form was becoming translucent, occasionally flickering between solid matter and something that existed partially outside normal space-time. "How are you feeling, Michael?" Dr. Kim asked through the communication system. "Incredible," came the reply, but the voice seemed to come from multiple locations simultaneously. "I can perceive dimensions I never knew existed. It's like, imagine if you've been living your entire life looking at shadows on a wall, and suddenly you could see the objects casting those shadows." Dr. Harrison monitored the energy readings from his instrument panel. The quantum signature is stabilizing. His consciousness is successfully integrating with the multidimensional matrix. But as the hours passed, it became clear that the transformation was more radical than anyone had anticipated. The volunteers were not simply gaining new abilities. They were becoming fundamentally different kinds of beings. They could still interact with normal matter, but they were no longer bound by the physical laws that govern purely material existence. "I can see the quantum structure underlying reality," Dr. Torres reported. "Matter, energy, space, time, they're all just different expressions of the same underlying information patterns. And I can influence those patterns directly." To demonstrate, he reached out toward a metal wall and simply passed through it, his hand existing temporarily in a dimensional state where solid matter posed no barrier. Then he solidified again, fully physical but with capabilities that defy conventional understanding. "The neural integration is complete," Dr. Kim announced. "Dr. Torres, you are now humanity's first successful quantum transformation." The implications were staggering. If the process could be scaled up to include Earth's entire population, humanity would survive the Devourer's arrival. But the beings that emerged would be so fundamentally different from their original selves that the question of whether humanity had truly survived became philosophical rather than practical. Admiral Torres arrived on Mars 3 days later to observe the transformation program personally. By then, 50 volunteers had undergone the process, and the results were both encouraging and deeply unsettling. The transformed humans retained their personalities and memories, but they existed in a state that was barely recognizable as human consciousness. "They can communicate with each other directly through quantum entanglement," Dr. Kim explained as they watched a group of transformed volunteers demonstrating their new abilities. "No need for spoken language or physical gestures. They can share thoughts, emotions, even complex technical knowledge instantaneously across any distance. And they can perceive the approach of the Devourers," added Dr. Harrison. Their enhanced consciousness can detect quantum disturbances that our instruments can't register. They're providing early warning capabilities that could prove crucial when the entities arrive. Admiral Torres watched her brother phase through solid walls and manipulate matter at the quantum level and try to reconcile what she was seeing with her memories of the person he had been. "Michael, are you still you?" The transformed being turned toward her, and she could see intelligence looking back. But it was an intelligence that existed on multiple levels simultaneously. "I'm more me than I've ever been," he replied. "The transformation doesn't diminish who we are. It reveals aspect of consciousness that physical brains can't access. But the physical form is just one way of existing," Michael finished. "We can still manifest physically when necessary, but we're no longer limited to a single-dimensional state. It's liberation, Rachel, not loss." Despite the reassurances, Admiral Torres felt a deep sense of unease. The beings her brother had become might claim to be human, but they were clearly something that transcended humanity as it had previously existed. The question was whether that transcendence represented evolution or extinction. Reports from Earth indicated that the transformation facilities were being constructed on schedule, but there was growing resistance among the population. Many people were unwilling to undergo a process that would fundamentally change what they were, even if it was necessary for survival. "We're facing civil unrest in major population centers," General Hayes reported during the daily briefing. "Religious groups are claiming the transformation is an abomination, while others argue that we should fight the devourers rather than surrender our humanity." "What's our timeline?" Torres asked. Dr. Warren consulted the latest projections. "The devourers will reach the outer edge of the solar system in 73 days. We need to begin mass transformation within 2 weeks to ensure global coverage before they arrive. And if portions of the population refuse?" The question hung in the air unanswered. The transformation process required voluntary participation. Forced quantum evolution had a 90% failure rate, resulting in complete dissolution of consciousness. But if significant portions of humanity refused to undergo the process, those people would be erased from existence when devourers arrived. Mara had been studying the cultural records left by the architects, trying to understand how other civilizations had faced the same choice. According to the alien archives, most species fragment when faced with this decision. Some members choose transformation. Others prefer to face extinction rather than surrender their original nature. "How did those divisions turn out?" Torres asked. "Badly," Mara admitted. "Species that fragment rarely achieve the unity necessary to complete the transformation successfully. The devourers consume the untransformed portions, and the trauma watching their loved ones erased from existence often drives the transformed survivors into isolation or madness." The weight of the decision was crushing. Torres was being forced to choose between preserving human unity and ensuring human survival. She could order mandatory transformation, but that would likely trigger civil war and reduce the chances of success. Or she could allow voluntary participation and watch helplessly as portions of humanity chose extinction over evolution. There's another option, the alien intelligence suggested during their daily communication session. The architects discovered that partial transformation is possible. Consciousness can be shifted into quantum states while maintaining the option to return to physical existence. "What's the catch?" Torres asked, knowing there had to be one. "The partial transformation provides only limited protection from devourers," the intelligence admitted. "Beings in transition states are more difficult to detect, but not impossible. It would buy time, but not guarantee survival." Dr. Kim looked up from her analysis. "How much time?" "Perhaps a few years while we develop more advanced defensive technologies. But ultimately, complete transformation would still be necessary for permanent survival. It was a compromise that might preserve both human survival and human choice. People could undergo partial transformation immediately, gaining some protection while retaining the option to complete the process later or choose their own fate. Prepare the specifications for partial transformation, Torres decided. We'll offer the population a choice: complete transformation for guaranteed survival, partial transformation for protection while maintaining human form, or unchanged existence with the acceptance of likely extinction. As the orders went out across human space, Mara reflected on the irony of their situation. Humanity had always dreamed of encountering alien intelligence, but they had never imagined that first contact would force them to choose between survival and their essential nature. The next few weeks would determine whether humanity emerged from the crisis as a transformed species capable of taking its place among the cosmic survivors, or whether they would join the countless civilizations that had chosen extinction over evolution. Either way, the universe would never again be the place they had thought it was. The partial transformation protocol offered a middle path that appealed to billions of humans who were unwilling to completely abandon their physical existence, but understood the necessity of some protection against the devourers. Within 2 weeks of the announcement, over 60% of Earth's population had volunteered for the hybrid process. Dr. Mara Elson underwent her own partial transformation on the same day as Admiral Torres, both of them recognizing that they needed to experience the process firsthand to understand its implications. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Her consciousness expanded across multiple dimensional layers, while her physical form remained largely intact. "It's extraordinary," she reported to the monitoring team as the quantum field generators completed their work. "I can perceive normal reality exactly as before, but I'm also aware of underlying information structures that were completely invisible to purely physical consciousness." Admiral Torres' experience was similar, but with a military focus. "I can detect quantum disturbances across vast distances," she announced. "The approaching devourers are clearly visible as disruptions in the fabric of space-time itself. They're massive, larger than entire star systems." The hybrid consciousness retained full human appearance and most human limitations, but gained the ability to perceive and interact with quantum reality. More importantly, it provided partial invisibility to entities that hunted by detecting organized information patterns. Dr. Kim, who had chosen complete transformation 3 days earlier, served as a bridge between the fully transformed and the hybrids. "The partial process is elegant," she reported. "You retain human physical existence while gaining access to quantum perception. But there are limitations." "What kind of limitations?" Dr. Harrison asked. He had chosen to remain fully human for now, arguing that they needed some researchers who could maintain purely physical perspective on the process. "Hybrid consciousness can't access the deepest layers of quantum reality," Kim explained. "We can perceive the devourers and avoid detection for limited periods, but we can't manipulate the fundamental information structures that control matter and energy." The distinction became crucial as the devourers drew closer to the solar system. Deep space monitoring stations, now staffed by transformed and hybrid personnel, provided increasingly detailed reports on the approaching entities. "They're not like anything we expected," reported Captain Lisa Chong, whose deep space monitoring team had undergone complete transformation to better track the entities. "The devourers exist as information patterns that span multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. They're not so much traveling through space as rewriting reality as they move. The entities consumed everything in their path, not just matter and energy, but the quantum information that defined the existence of planets, stars, and entire stellar systems. Behind them, they left regions of space that were completely empty, as if nothing had ever existed there at all. How long until they reach Earth?" Admiral Torres asked during the daily threat assessment briefing. 47 days, Captain Chong replied. "But their influence extends far beyond their physical presence. We're already detecting reality fluctuations in the outer solar system. Some of the asteroids in the Kuiper Belt have begun flickering." Dr. Harrison pulled up the astronomical data. "Flickering. Phasing in and out of existence," Chong explained. "The devourer's approach is destabilizing the quantum foundations of local space. Objects with low information density are becoming unstable. The implications were terrifying. If the entities could destabilize matter simply by approaching, Earth's defensive preparations might be insufficient regardless of how many people underwent transformation. What about the fully transformed individuals?" Torres asked. "Are they stable?" Dr. Kim, speaking from her multidimensional perspective, provided reassurance. "Complete transformation appears to provide full protection. Our consciousness exists in quantum states that the devourers can't detect or affect. But the hybrid forms are more vulnerable than we initially calculated." Mara felt a chill of apprehension. "How vulnerable?" "The partial transformation provides protection against direct consumption," Kim explained, but not against the reality fluctuations the devourers create. If the quantum foundations of local space become too unstable, even hybrid consciousness might not be able to maintain coherence. The revelation forced a reassessment of their entire defensive strategy. Partial transformation might not be sufficient to ensure survival, but there wasn't enough time to convert the entire population to complete quantum existence. We need another option, Admiral Torres decided. Dr. Elson, what do the architect records say about civilizations that face similar time constraints? Mara consulted the alien archives that had been downloaded from the Europa repository. Several species attempted what they called civilization migration, transferring their entire population to pocket dimensions that exist outside normal space-time. Is that possible with current technology? Dr. Harrison asked. The alien intelligence believes so, Mara replied, but it would require converting Earth's entire industrial capacity to dimensional manipulation technology. We'd essentially be building a portal large enough to move our entire civilization into quantum space. The concept was staggering in scope. Rather than transforming individuals, they would transform reality itself around Earth, creating a pocket dimension where human civilization could exist safely while the devourers passed through normal space. Timeline? Torres asked. Dr. Kim ran calculations through her enhanced quantum consciousness. 39 days if we mobilize every resource in human space. But it would require perfect coordination between transformed, hybrid, and unmodified humans working together. And the consequences of failure? Complete erasure, Kim replied simply. If the dimensional portal fails while the devourers are present, Earth and everything on it will be consumed instantly. Admiral Torres faced the most complex military logistics challenge in human history. She needed to coordinate the transformation of billions of people, the construction of technology that had never been tested, and the migration of an entire civilization into dimensions that barely existed, all while cosmic entities capable of erasing reality itself drew closer with each passing day. We're going to attempt all three strategies simultaneously, she decided. Continue the complete transformation program for volunteers. Maintain partial transformation for those who prefer it. And begin construction of the dimensional migration portal as a backup plan. That will stretch our resources beyond their limits, General Hayes warned. We'll be attempting 3 impossibly complex operations at the same time. Because we can't afford to fail at any of them, Torres replied. If one strategy fails, we need the others as backup. Human survival is worth any cost. As the orders went out across human space, Mara reflected on how much their species had changed in just a few weeks. They had gone from a civilization that thought they were alone in the universe to one desperately trying to avoid extinction at the hands of cosmic entities they couldn't even properly comprehend. The next 39 days would determine whether humanity joined the ranks of civilizations that had successfully hidden from the devourers, or whether they would become another forgotten entry in the universe's catalog of extinct species. Either way, the beings that emerged from the crisis would be fundamentally different from anything that had existed before. The question was whether they would still be recognizably human, or whether the price of survival would be the complete transformation of human consciousness itself. With 23 days remaining until the devourers reached Earth, human civilization existed in a state of controlled chaos unlike anything in recorded history. 3 massive projects proceeded simultaneously across the solar system. The complete transformation facilities on Mars and the Moon, the hybrid transformation centers on Earth, and the dimensional portal construction that surrounded the planet like a technological sphere. Dr. Mara Elson found herself coordinating between all 3 projects, her hybrid consciousness allowing her to process information at rates that would have been impossible for purely human intelligence. She could perceive the quantum structures underlying the portal construction while maintaining the emotional connections necessary to work with unmodified humans. Portal construction is proceeding ahead of schedule, reported Dr. Elizabeth Warren from a primary orbital platform. The alien intelligence has provided specifications for quantum field generators that exceed our wildest theoretical models. We're literally building a doorway between dimensions. The portal itself was a marvel of hybrid human-alien engineering. Thousands of crystalline structures orbited Earth in precise geometric patterns, their quantum fields interweaving to create a stable dimensional interface. When activated, The entire planet would be shifted into a pocket dimension where it could exist safely while the Devourers passed through normal space. What about the transformation programs? Admiral Torres asked during their daily coordination meeting. Her own hybrid consciousness allowed her to monitor all 3 projects simultaneously, but the stress of coordinating humanity's survival was showing in her increasingly translucent appearance. Dr. Sarah Kim, now existing as pure quantum consciousness, provided updates from Mars facilities. We've achieved complete transformation for over 2 billion individuals. The process is becoming more efficient as we gain experience, but we're still limited by the volunteer rate. The bottleneck wasn't technological, but psychological. Despite the approaching extinction threat, nearly 40% of humanity remained unwilling to undergo complete transformation. They preferred to risk extinction rather than abandon their physical existence. The hybrid program is showing better acceptance rates, reported Dr. Harrison from Earth's Primary Transformation Center. We've processed nearly 5 billion people for partial transformation, but the protection levels are concerning. The latest tests have revealed that hybrid consciousness provided only temporary protection against the Devourer's influence. As the entities drew closer, their reality-distorting effects were becoming stronger. Some hybrid individuals were already experiencing stability issues as the quantum foundations of local space began to fluctuate. We need to accelerate the timeline, Mara decided. The Devourer's approach is destabilizing space-time faster than we anticipated. Captain Chang's monitoring team, operating from their fully transformed state, provided increasingly urgent reports. The entities have consumed the outer planets, she announced. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune no longer exist. The orbital mechanics of the solar system are beginning to collapse. The implications were staggering. The Devourers weren't just approaching Earth. They were systematically erasing the entire solar system. The gravitational changes from the missing planets were already affecting Earth's orbit, and climate systems were beginning to show signs of stress. How much time do we really have? Admiral Torres asked. Kim ran complex calculations through her quantum consciousness. 15 days until the reality fluctuations reach levels that will destabilize hybrid consciousness. 8 days until the portal must be activated to maintain dimensional stability. And if we activate the portal early? Unknown, Kim admitted. The specifications suggest that premature activation could result in dimensional drift. Earth might be protected from the Devourers, but we could end up in a pocket dimension that we can never leave. Mara studied the convergence of all their timelines and realized they were approaching a critical decision point. We can't wait any longer for perfect solutions. We need to begin emergency protocols now. The next 7 days became a desperate race against cosmic extinction. The portal construction teams worked around the clock to complete the dimensional interface, while reality itself became increasingly unstable around them. The transformation centers processed volunteers at maximum capacity, while the hybrid protection systems struggled against mounting quantum interference. But the most disturbing development came from the alien intelligence itself. After weeks of helpful cooperation, it began expressing what the translation systems interpreted as concern, not about humanity's survival, but about something else approaching alongside the Devourers. The intelligence is detecting additional entities, Dr. Kim reported during an emergency briefing. Something that follows the Devourers but isn't part of them. The translations are unclear, but it appears to be some kind of observer or recorder. Observer of what? Torres demanded. The alien intelligence's response was complex and filled with concepts that barely translated into human language. It spoke of entities that documented the extinction of civilizations, maintaining records of species that had been erased from existence. The architects had encountered them before, and the experience had traumatized their entire civilization. They're called the Witnesses, Mara translated. They arrive after Devourers have finished consuming a civilization and record the empty space where that species once existed. According to the architects, being observed by the Witnesses is worse than extinction. It's a kind of cosmic mockery. Why worse? Dr. Harrison asked. Because the Witnesses can perceive erased species in their quantum archives, Kim explained. They know what was destroyed, and they preserve that knowledge while ensuring that nothing can ever return to existence. It's like being trapped in a cosmic museum of extinction. The revelation added new urgency to their survival efforts. Not only did they need to avoid extinction at the hands of the Devourers, they needed to ensure that their efforts to survive didn't attract the attention of entities that specialized in documenting failure. The portal activation needs to happen now, Admiral Torres decided. We can't risk encountering the witnesses. But as the dimensional portal began its activation sequence, new problems emerged. The reality fluctuations caused by the approaching Devourers were interfering with the quantum field generators. Several portal components began exhibiting instability that threatened the entire system. We're losing quantum coherence in sectors 7 through 12, Dr. Warren reported. If the field collapse continues, the portal will be unusable. Mara made a desperate decision. Using her hybrid consciousness, she began interfacing directly with the portal's quantum systems, her enhanced perception allowing her to stabilize the failing components. But the effort required her to push her consciousness deeper into quantum space than the hybrid transformation was designed to allow. Mara, your neural patterns are destabilizing, Dr. Kim warned. You're pushing beyond the safe limits of partial transformation. The portal is more important than any individual, Mara replied, her physical form becoming increasingly translucent as she poured more of her consciousness into stabilizing the dimensional interface. Around Earth, the portal system stabilized and began generating the field that would shift the planet into its protective pocket dimension. But the strain on Mara's hybrid consciousness was enormous. She was being forced to choose between maintaining her human nature and ensuring humanity's survival. As the dimensional shift began, and Earth faded from normal space-time, Mara felt her consciousness spreading across multiple dimensional layers. She was becoming something beyond human, beyond hybrid, beyond anything that had existed before. But in that transformation, she could perceive something that filled her with hope. Other worlds were making the same transition. Across the galaxy, civilizations were activating their own dimensional portals, moving into quantum space ahead of the advancing Devourers. The cosmic war was far from over, but it wasn't being fought by individual species struggling in isolation. It was becoming a coordinated resistance by all the survivors working together. Humanity had joined something much larger than themselves, a galaxy-spanning alliance of transformed civilizations united in their determination to resist extinction. The next phase of the war was about to begin. 5 years had passed since Earth's successful transition into the pocket dimension, and the civilization that had emerged bore little resemblance to the one that had faced extinction. Dr. Mara Elson, now existing as a consciousness that spanned multiple dimensional layers simultaneously, stood on what had once been called the observation deck of the International Space Station. The view before her defied conventional description. Earth hung suspended in a space that wasn't quite space, surrounded by the shimmering barriers that separated their pocket dimension from the normal universe. Beyond those barriers, she could perceive the vast network of similar pocket dimensions where other civilizations had taken refuge from the Devourers. The latest reports from the Surveillance Corps announced Admiral Torres, whose consciousness now existed in a state that allowed her to command military operations across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Devourers have consumed 47% of the galaxy's normal space, but their advance has slowed significantly. The Surveillance Corps was one of many new institutions that had emerged from humanity's transformation. Composed of individuals who had undergone complete quantum evolution, they could observe normal space without risking detection by the Devourers. Their reports painted a picture of a universe where the war between information predators and their prey had reached a new phase. What about the resistance networks? Mara asked, referring to the alliance of survivor civilizations that had formed in the years since the mass dimensional migrations. Dr. Kim, whose consciousness now existed as pure information capable of instantaneous travel between dimensional boundaries, materialized beside them. Remarkable progress. We've established communication with over 200 surviving civilizations. The knowledge exchange has accelerated our technological development beyond anything we achieved as an isolated species. The Alliance had transformed not just humanity, but the very nature of civilization itself. Species that had once been separated by millions of light years now work together in quantum space, sharing technologies and strategies that were revolutionizing their understanding of reality. The architects have emerged from their long hibernation, Kim continued. They're sharing technologies that could fundamentally alter the balance of power in the cosmic war. Mara nodded, remembering the ancient intelligence that had first warned them about the Devourers. After 50,000 years of hiding, the architects had decided that the time for defensive action was over. They were ready to join the active resistance. What kind of technologies? Torres asked. Reality manipulation on a scale we never imagined possible, Kim replied. The ability to create new universes, to restructure the fundamental constants that govern physics, to design pocket dimensions that can serve as weapons against information predators. The implications were staggering. The survivor civilizations weren't just hiding from the Devourers anymore. They were preparing to take the fight to their enemies. But the campaign they were planning would require coordination between hundreds of transformed species and technologies that pushed the boundaries of what consciousness itself could achieve. And humanity's role in all this? Mara asked. Critical, Torres replied. Our hybrid transformation process has proven unique among the survivor species. We can maintain connections to physical reality while operating in quantum space. That makes us ideal intermediaries between fully transformed civilizations and the few species that have managed to survive without dimensional migration. Dr. Harrison, who had finally undergone complete transformation 6 months earlier, joined their discussion. There's something else. The witnesses that follow the Devourers, we've learned they're not just passive observers. They're actually part of a larger intelligence network that documents the cosmic war. And some of the surviving civilizations believe the witnesses might be turned into allies. The concept was revolutionary. If the entities that recorded extinct civilizations could be convinced to join the resistance, they could provide intelligence about the Devourers' origins and weaknesses that no one else possessed. The next phase of the war is about to begin, Mara realized. We're moving from survival to active resistance. More than that, Kim said, her consciousness expressing something that might have been excitement if it had been bound by human emotions. We're preparing to discover who created the Devourers and why. The Alliance believes that the information predators are artificial constructs designed by some ultimate intelligence to prevent the emergence of competitors. Which means there's an enemy behind the enemies, Torres concluded. An intelligence so advanced that it treats the destruction of entire civilizations as a routine defensive measure. Mara looked out at the network of pocket dimensions that surrounded Earth, each one containing a survivor civilization with its own stories of transformation and resistance. Humanity had joined something far greater than themselves, but they had also become something far greater than they had ever imagined possible. The young species that had once dreamed of exploring the stars had instead discovered that the universe was a battlefield where consciousness itself was at stake. But they had also learned that intelligence, creativity, and the determination to survive could transcend any physical limitation. When do we begin? Mara asked. The Alliance has scheduled the first coordinated offensive for next year, Torres replied. We'll be targeting the Devourer manufacturing centers in the Galactic core. If successful, we could disrupt their ability to create new information predators. And if we fail, then we continue the war from whatever dimensional refuges remain, Kim said. But failure isn't an option. Too many civilizations have sacrificed too much to reach this point. As they stood together in the transformed space that had once been purely human, Mara reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. They had begun as a single species facing extinction, and had become part of galactic resistance that spanned multiple dimensions and forms of existence. The war for the future of consciousness was far from over, but for the first time since the Devourers had been detected, the forces of intelligence and creativity were preparing to take the offensive. Whatever the outcome, the universe would never again be dominated by entities that treated the extinction of thinking beings as acceptable policy. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars, not as explorers or conquerors, but as guardians of the principle that consciousness itself was worth preserving at any cost. The greatest adventure in their species' history was just beginning.